Hey guys, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you for once again coming back home, family. For those of you that happen to be new here, I definitely hope that you hear something today that will persuade you to stay. Now, if you happen to be here for the very first time, I hope that you hear something that will persuade you to hit the subscribe button, like, comment down below, and share to your social media platforms. With that being said, let's jump straight into today's video. Now, we know that the pagan festival of Valentine's Day is today. And some people gonna click off the video after hearing that I'm calling it pagan, because women, specifically black women, love nothing more than to manipulate and guilt trip their men into buying lavish gifts on this day to feed themselves in some type of false delusion that they are in relationships with the world's most romantic man in the world. When we begin to look at the origins and etymology of things, this cannot be dismissed. And doing so is not only poor scholarship, it is ignorance, and vain glory. When we look into the feast of Lupercalia, that is the origins of Valentine's Day. And the Roman Catholic Church actually made this into an official holiday. So everybody that's celebrating today, you are indeed a pagan. We have to begin to realize that if the world is doing it, it is Babylonian in nature. We should all think about the Tower of Babel when the world was on one accord, one language. This is the Catholic Church, the universal church's mission, to get everyone to be under the same worship, and they have us greatly deceived with all of these holidays. Since when have every race, every ethnicity, every nationality of people celebrating the same thing been a good thing? Everyone has their own culture. So when the cultures are shared, it becomes pagan. Now, when we begin to look into the feast of Lupercalia, this was a sacrifice of the goat, which we see in Near Eastern customs, as well as the dog. The dog stood out to me a lot. It reminded me of Jezebel and how she died. Jezebel is often misdescribed biblically and just thrown around as a term haphazardly to describe women who wear lipstick. Jezebel was a princess of Tyre and Zidon. Her father was a Phoenician, Zidonian king. And we know that the ancient Phoenicians are known to be, by the seaports, sea peoples. They are sellers and represented by the color purple. The color purple, when you mix red and blue, you get the color purple. When you begin to think into Freemasonry, you have the Red Lodge and the Blue Lodge. And somebody that I was really close to at one point in time, their room was actually purple. And this represents the joining of those lodges. Now, when we also look into the fact that the tribe of Dan is seen greatly amongst the sea people, because the tribe of Dan too are merchants and they are Freemasons. Well, how do I know this? Oh, my grandfather, Leonard Holiday, our family crest was represented by a few different emblems that represents Israelites, but specifically that serpent and the boats. And we know for a fact that by him being mayor of London over Mooresville, he was one of the 125 merchants who founded the East Indian Company. Line up on line, precept on precept, here a little, there a little. Let's continue. We began to look into Jezebel and her death was known to be very painful. She was thrown out of the window and she was eaten by dogs. Now, why am I hung up on this dog? Because dogs is representation of death. Let's see if I'm tripping. When we begin to look into ancient Egypt, we will begin to see Anubis, and Anubis is represented as a jackal. And we know that the jackal ain't nothing but a big old black dog. And when you begin to look into the Medu Neter and Egyptian iconography, we'll see Anubis alongside Mayat, and Mayat is the goddess of wisdom who begins to take the heart and weigh it on the scale in comparison to a feather to see the journey that the soul will go on in the afterlife. Biblically speaking, when we begin to look into the book of Revelation and we are judged against the books of the law, this is the same concept. They would take the blood of the goat and the blood of the dog and put it on a whip and whip women with this as a sign of fertility. Now, they would also take a knife and take this blood and mark it in the symbol of a cross on the forehead of the people. Now, why is the marking of the forehead standing out? This is blood. We have to remember that the pineal gland is literally your lesser brain. This is scientifically speaking. And esoterically, when we begin to look at Jacob, and he fought and wrestled with the Melech, or some translations begin to say Elohim, that he did so on Pinal. This was a spiritual thing that began to take place, and his name was changed. So when we begin to look into the marking, this takes me back to the video that I made about the Islamic Dajjal and how he will be coming back with the marking on his forehead that in Arabic says deceiver. Okay? Now, this is very important to begin to realize that these markings in the forehead leads back to end times when it says that you will take the mark of the beast and his name will be in your hand or in your forehead. So Ash Wednesday, marking of the T in the forehead. Valentine's Day, marking of the T with blood in the forehead. Well, what does T represent in Hebrew? The T is Tav. And we begin to look at this letter. It is a combination of the dialect, which is the letter D, and the Nun, which is N. And this letter equates to 400. Now, we oftentimes hear the 400-year prophecy amongst the Israelites that says at the end of this at the end of this captivity, we will be released, and what will happen, you will have to be known by the signs of your worship. And this is when tribulation will take place. Let's look into the book of Ezekiel to see if we can find some more precepts concerning this. When you begin to look into the book of Ezekiel, it's represented by a man with an inkhorn. And he went through the city taking a census of worship. He began to find those who were keeping the Sabbath, the feast days, the holy days, crying out, just asking for the Most High to be their protection, Psalms 91, and to lead them and to guide them. He marked them as safe. Will you be marked safe, found on your worship, or will you be marked for death? Well, Tira, how are you going to take it there and say that this is a marking for death? Let's continue. The Tav literally means a sign, a symbol, a mark, an oath. It also represents death. We need to begin to realize that when we celebrate these holy days in other cultures, we are sacrificing to these gods. So on today, while you celebrate Valentine's Day, you are literally sacrificing your relationship with your husband, your wife, your fiance, your child's mother, your child's father, this person that you love. You are sacrificing your relationship to death. And it's not a stretch. This is what it is, whether we want to hear it or not, whether we like it or not. The Most High will not return void concerning his word. So if you are found keeping these feast days, when his son returns, you will be slaughtered. You will be judged. You will be unalived. And there is no way around it. There is nothing okay about this day. And I am so happy to know what I know now. This is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Do us all a favor, like this video, comment down below, share it to your social media platforms, and remember, when the world does something together, it is Babylonian in nature. Line up on line, precept on precept. Here a little, there a little. Food for thought.